Danganronpa, a game so convoluted, so controversial, so cringe, has gone from somewhat lovable standalone title to full-fledged franchise with multiple successful sequels and spin-offs. But how? How do you follow up a game like this? Well, you need a story that makes even less sense, with even more poorly written characters, and a twist so bad it's embarrassing. You need a game so cringe, so nonsensical, so problematic, you have no choice but to love it. And that game is what we're talking about today. This is part 2 of my Danganronpa series retrospective, where I recap each game, character, and class trial, going over what makes them great or garbage. So without further ado, this is Danganronpa 2 Goodbye Despair. Let's do a quick Welcome to Dangan Island abridged. Our name is Hajime Hinata, ordinary high schooler attending Hope's Peak Academy as the ultimate, but on our first day things get weird. We walk into our classroom bright and early to meet our 15 ultimate classmates, and when the bell rings, our teacher, magical girl Miracle Usami, appears to take us to Dangan Island for our heart-throbbing school trip. Let the fun times begin. That is the general premise of Danganronpa 2. During the day, we explore our beautiful island home, spend time with our colorful cast of characters, and at night, we all meet in the park for... Yes, Monokuma is back, and our vacation is cut short as he turns Usami into Monami and takes over the island with his Mono Beast. This can only mean one thing: let the killing begin. I'm gonna assume you have either watched my previous Danganronpa video, or at least know what the deal with Danganronpa 1 is, so we're just gonna go right into the game. Let's get a few comparisons to the first game out of the way. For the most part, the main gameplay loop is the same between the two games: explore, investigate, debate, and so on. But for me, Danganronpa 2 definitely feels bigger and better. The exploration during daily life is more fleshed out with a much larger overworld, and the new hidden Monokumas add a fun collectible element to the game that honestly makes it feel more complete. I understand some people missing the smaller, more organized setting of Hope's Peak, but I personally love the Dangan Island vibes. Deadly Life, on the other hand, is for the most part the same, although it's probably a bit cleaner thanks to this just being a new game with more optimized UI. Moving on, we have Class Trials, which had the biggest glow up. Panic Talk action and Hangman's Gambit were improved, and the new Logic Dive and Rebuttal Showdowns add more complexity and more hype moments during the Class Trials. For a genre of games where the appeal is usually just the story and characters, the fact that Danganronpa and Danganronpa 2 are able to both introduce and pull off the almost action-oriented Class Trials deserves some props. Dang 2 also deserves extra for just how hot it starts off. Chapter 1 is one of the greatest comebacks in video game history. The previous game, although somewhat open-ended, wrapped up nicely as its own self-contained story. It is hard to get people invested in a supposed direct sequel when you have a brand new cast, setting, and no noticeable connection to the previous game, but D2 was able to easily get past this hurdle thanks to one thing: Byakuya Togami, the ultimate affluent progeny. Yes, our smug rich boy is back, but this time he's not playing games. True, he doesn't remember his past, nor do any of our classmates, but we the players do, and something tells me Byakuya might know more than he himself can even explain. By sheer instinct, he takes on a more protective and leading role among the group, guiding us through our first few days here, vowing to keep killing at an all-time low and friendship at an all-time high. In order to help with the latter, we decided to fix up the old abandoned dining hall and throw a party tonight, but even with all of Byakuya's safety measures, we could not expect what would happen next. Everyone's shocked as the lights suddenly go out, and when they finally come back...
I'm sorry, I tripped again.
Rip? At least that's all that happened. Things could have been much worse, but thankfully all those precautions paid off. Isn't that great, Byakuya? Byakuya? Rip. Yes, unfortunately our stout king is dead. Monokuma reappears to drop off our first Monokuma file and starts counting down towards the class trial. Let the investigation begin. As much as I love Fat Byakuya, his death really was the best thing this game could have done. He is such an interesting character, and his impact on the other characters, the player, and on what's to come is insane. We knew going into this chapter that Byakuya was the person to look out for. Not because he was likely to kill someone or anything bad, but because we know his past. He defeated the Killing Game once before, and the fact that he's here now has so many implications. What happened to Makoto and friends? What happened to the Mastermind? Did Byakuya really lose all of his memories this time? It certainly seems like he knows more than the rest of us, or at least has some sort of information regarding his past based on him retaining his character growth from the previous game, and points in the chapter where he speaks to Hajime about revealing his truth in due time. Byakuya's death also leaves a big hole in the group, no pun intended. With him gone, we have no leader, no one to protect us from Monokuma, no one to protect us from ourselves, and it forces Hajime to take initiative rather than leading on someone else. Overall, Byakuya is a great character. His presence alone hooks you right away, and his untimely death leaves so many unanswered questions. And while his death might not be as genre-breaking or outside of the box as Sayaka's death from Dang 1, Byakuya's death continues the Chapter 1 trend of deep and interesting characters that get you invested, even with their short amount of screen time. Unfortunately, in true Danganronpa fashion, the same cannot be said for our first killer. Teruteru Hanamura, the ultimate cook, is in a weird spot where he just kinda sucks. He's another character whose gimmick is being a pervert that bothers his classmates all the time, similar to these characters, who if you remember from the last video, I hate. But unlike these other two degenerates, Teruteru has some good qualities. Throughout the class trial, we learn about his backstory, how he cares about his hardworking mother, and yes, how he cares about all of his classmates. For you see, although Teruteru is a murderer, his intent was not to kill Byakuya, but to stop an even greater tragedy from befalling the class by instead killing Nagito. Nagito Komaeda, the ultimate lucky student, is one of the most popular characters in the entire series, and is the most popular, most sacred ship for Hajime in the entire fandom. I really like Nagito. I do think it's crazy how obsessed people are with his character, but I also have to admit it's kinda deserved. Nagito is the most interesting character in the entire series, plain and simple. He starts out as a friendly guy, but as the mystery unfolds, we learn his true nature, a hopelessly hope-obsessed maniac. His twisted view on what hope is and creating that hope by any means necessary caused him to set the first kill in motion in order to help one of his fellow ultimate students, the hopes of the future, win the killing game and become the ultimate hope. Nagito manipulated the entire planning of the party and originally planned to kill someone himself during the blackout, but when he was found out, he then manipulated Teruteru into trying to kill him. Things obviously didn't go exactly according to plan, but that doesn't faze Nagito because more than anything else, he believes in his talent, the ultimate luck. Things don't end here for Nagito, but seeing as he is not the Blackened, we can't do anything more to stop him. As for our other classmates, there is still a lot to say. Characters like Fuyuhiko, Chiaki, and even Monami show the beginnings of some interesting character arcs. However, this section is already sizing up to be a long portion of the video, so I will end character discussion for now and circle back to the end of the class trial. We are eventually able to prove Teruteru is the Blackened thanks in no small part to this scene. Yes, the writers somehow made this picture relevant to the actual story. And with that, all the truths are revealed. Our class has no choice but to vote out Teruteru and witness his execution by deep fry, ending Chapter 1. On my first playthrough, Chapter 1 honestly took me by surprise. From all the callbacks to the previous game, to all the setup for what's to come, I really couldn't believe how much I wanted to keep playing. There are so many questions I'm looking forward to answering, and no doubt, so many twists that will make me question all of those answers. Let's get to Chapter 2. With the completion of every chapter, we're given access to new parts of the island as Monami takes out the Monabeast guarding each gate. Is our former teacher actually on our side, or is she just a tool to manipulate us and make the killing game more exciting for Monokuma? Who knows? All I can confirm is she has godly theme music. As we explore the new island, we of course interact with all of our classmates who all pretty much have something important to say. I do want to avoid having a huge 15-man roll call, however, so I'll continue to introduce characters as they become more relevant to the case at hand. For now, we'll get straight to the motive of this chapter. Motives are like random rewards or ultimatums given by Monokuma in order to provoke the students to kill each other. Previously unmentioned was the motive for Chapter 1, School Memories. In exchange for killing another student, Monokuma would restore the killer's erased memories. However, this motive didn't end up playing an important role during the class trial, since the entire murder plot was more a series of unfortunate events. Chapter 2's motive, on the other hand, is a driving force in the story: the Twilight Syndrome murder case. This arcade game is supposed to be the missing link in our memories, but playing it will most definitely lead to murder. We ignore it for now and instead go back to the heart-throbbing school trip mode. It's time for the beach episode, and here is where I quickly mention, this is a weeb game from 2012, and it's just something you have to accept about Danganronpa. There are a lot of lewd or inappropriate scenes and text of these animated teenagers, and it's not as if these swimsuit scenes are outrageous or anything like that, but things like the multiple girl-obsessed pervert trope characters, scenes of characters flashing the camera, and the most out-of-pocket secret bath scene ever that I don't even want to show in this video even with a blur, are a little much. I think as you play Danganronpa, you slowly become numb to how ridiculous it is, but every now and then, your eyes pop out of your head, and you gotta make sure you're playing with headphones on, you know? Either way, let's get back to the beach episode, where... RIP. Mahiru Koizumi, the ultimate photographer, is just kinda there. She's cool and nice to everyone, but she's not really the most relevant character. Mahiru's biggest character trait is probably her relationship with Hiyoko Sayonji, the ultimate dancer, who is a dumb brat whose classmates other than Mahiru don't even like. Obviously her design and her attitude don't really match up. And am I gonna make fun of the guys that this type of character is meant to pander to? Not out loud, but nevertheless, Hiyoko was kinda lame and unfortunately a suspect in her best friend's murder. As we start running out of leads, we have no choice but to look back at the Twilight Syndrome game for clues. We unlock the true ending of the game and learn that the murder is actually a real past event that our classmates were involved in. Throughout the trial, it's revealed that the girl murdered in Twilight Syndrome is Natsumi Kuzuryu, little sister of Fuyuhiko Kuzuryu, the ultimate Yakuza. Fuyuhiko has been stubborn and aggressive towards the class, refusing to participate in any group activities since the beginning of the game, and it's kind of understandable after learning his backstory. His younger sister had been murdered in school by a group of girls that included some of our very own classmates, most notably Mahiru. Although no one here played a part in the actual murder, Fuyuhiko still confronts Mahiru and in a fit of rage attacks her with a metal bat, the same way his little sister was killed. Even if things ended here, it would be a fitting end for the ultimate Yakuza, but before Fuyuhiko can actually hit Mahiru, he's stopped by Peko Pekoyama, the ultimate swordswoman, who then kills Mahiru herself. We vote Peko out as the Blackened, but things don't end here. After the vote, Peko's true identity as hitman for the Kuzuryu family and basically Fuyuhiko's lifelong indentured servant is revealed. She supposedly killed Mahiru on Fuyuhiko's order and is willing to throw her life away and be a tool for her master to win the killing game, as by technicality, Fuyuhiko would be the true Blackened and Peko is just a pawn in his plan. All Fuyuhiko has to do is reject Peko's humanity and call her his tool, but Fuyuhiko, who has been struggling with his past, his morals, and his relationships for the entire game, and most likely his entire life since the death of his little sister, instead rejects despair and chooses to acknowledge his somewhat romantic feelings for Peko, claiming he never thought of her as just a tool. Peko successfully becomes the Blackened and will sacrifice herself, not for her master, but to help her friend, and thus begins the redemption of Fuyuhiko Kuzuryu. While I love the arc between these two characters, I'm not actually a big fan of Peko, which I think is a hot take. I don't know, I'm just not into the whole pseudo non-feeling robot who will do anything for their master character, although she is quickly shown to be a little more than that. Her greatest dub, ironically, is being a tool for Fuyuhiko to shine. Seeing him grow from troubled antagonist to friend in this chapter is great, and seeing him continue to grow as he begins his redemption arc from here on out will also be amazing. But before the light at the end of the tunnel comes despair. Peko takes her last chance to say goodbye as we witness her execution, the one-woman army, thus ending Chapter 2. While dropping hints of the true story surrounding the second killing game, Dang 2 has more so been focused on the situation at hand. But as shown in the last game, in order to survive the killing game, we need to learn its secrets, which we finally start to do in Chapter 3. Let's get straight to the motive of this chapter, despair disease. This disease infects multiple students with unique symptoms. We have Nagito, who is infected with the liar disease, Akane Owari, the ultimate gymnast, who is infected with the coward's disease, and Ibuki Miyota, the ultimate musician, who's infected with the gullible disease. These three are put into quarantine under the watch of this Goober Squad. Unfortunately, we suck at our jobs and... double rip. Let's go ahead and rip two band-aids off at the same time. Number 1, yes, this is a double murder case, with our victims being Hiyoko and Ibuki. And number 2, people don't like this case. And here is where I want to talk about something that plagues many notable mystery adventure games. Something I and many others like to call third case syndrome. What is third case syndrome? It's the tendency for games like Danganronpa or shout out to Ace Attorney to have bad or unpopular third chapters. And there are many reasons for this. It could be over-predictability, like with Celeste in Dang 1. It could be the disconnect from the overarching plot, like with many Ace Attorney games. Or it could just be annoyingly written characters, which pretty much every game has. Third case syndrome is just used to indicate a common trend of lackluster chapters that are awkwardly placed in the middle of these games and act as a sort of calm before the storm, since usually the build-up to the huge climax begins right after. Do I agree with third case syndrome in general? No. I've already talked about my love for Celeste and her case in Dang 1. There might be a better argument for Ace Attorney, but it's still not concrete. Turnabout Big Top is a masterpiece, by the way. The real question is Danganronpa 2 Chapter 3 a bad case? Let's talk about it. One big problem with this case is the murder plot of our Blackened, Mikan, the ultimate nurse, aka the ultimate fan service. If you want to talk about predictability, sure, Mikan is the most likely suspect. It's not Hajime, of course, and Fuyuhiko is literally a saint now, and no one else has 24-hour access to patients like Ibuki other than Mikan. The whole scenario of faking the murder video and having all these moving parts magically fall into place is a bit of a meme, but like I said earlier, you have to embrace all the ridiculous parts of Danganronpa's story. I wouldn't say this case is great, but it certainly is one of the more entertaining and complex murder schemes in the game. The bigger problem I've noticed is that new players take issue with Mikan's character during this chapter. Since the beginning, she's been a clumsy yet good-natured girl who does her best to take care of everyone, which is fitting for the ultimate nurse. But in Chapter 3, she's revealed to be insane. She's basically evolved into the ultimate despair, laughing at the deaths of her former friends and becoming obsessed with her beloved. It's revealed that she caught the remembering disease from the despair patients, meaning that she became this way due to regaining her lost memories, meaning that this is the true Mikan. Everyone is obviously shocked, and apparently so are many players for different reasons. Whether you hate this crazy twist that comes out of almost nowhere, or you hate all these new questions we now have, I don't think it would be fair to call this trial or the game bad at this point. And while the huge climax of this story is yet to be seen, all the new questions and answers are good setups for what's to come. Circling back to the actual case, and the question of whether or not Chapter 3 is a bad case. I think the answer has to be no. It might not have the overarching mystery of Byakuya and Nagito in Chapter 1, or the emotional character arc of Fuyuhiko in Chapter 2, but Chapter 3 is honestly a great setup/introduction chapter to the final arc of the game. Another important aspect of this chapter is Nekomaru Nidai, the ultimate team manager, who was killed by Monokuma. Yeah, Monokuma was trying to kill Akane for breaking the rules, but Nekomaru sacrificed himself to save her. I didn't mention this earlier since it wasn't really important to the plot of this chapter, but in the end, he's actually revived as Mekamaru. Surely he'll be more important in the next chapter, right? Either way, we all vote Mikan out, and she is executed in Bye Bye Ouchies, maybe the lamest and most fanservice-y execution in the series, which might be another reason for the hate on this case, but with that, we are finished with Chapter 3.
Danganronpa.
Chapter 3 is a solid chapter despite its black sheep status. No, I do not think it's the worst chapter in the game. It might be surprising, but I think the title of worst chapter goes to our next one, Chapter 4. Hot take alert. Chapter 4 being my least favorite chapter is definitely a controversial opinion. Most people love it, and while I don't think it's a terrible chapter, I do think it's kinda boring. The whole scenario of being stuck in the funhouse is meh. First off, the motive, straight up starvation, is probably the weakest motive in the entire series. I just don't like it as much as all the more weird, out-of-pocket motives we've seen before. And yes, starvation makes for a desperate situation, especially the longer it goes on, but it is long and basic. Motives have never been all or nothing, either kill or game over, physical punishment type shit. They were more nuanced, messing with the student's mental and affecting everyone in a unique way. They were something that not only gave despair, but also hope that we could overcome said motive until someone succumbed to their weakness. But in Chapter 4, there's none of that. It's over, we literally just have to kill someone, there's no game anymore. I think the secret of the funhouse is meh. While the exact layout of Strawberry House and Grape House might not be predictable, it's pretty obvious from the beginning that they share the tower. I don't think the visuals are very appealing. Being stuck looking at the inside of a circus building is definitely not my aesthetic. The most interesting thing about the funhouse is of course the final dead room and Hajime becoming desperate enough to try going in, and Nagito actually going in and controlling him for that portion of the chapter is of course godly. But for the rest of the chapter, I was falling asleep. I was running out of energy like I was the one starving out there. Finally, super hot take alert, I think the murder is the weakest in the game, from both the view of the victim Mekamaru and our killer, Gundam Tanaka, the ultimate breeder. Mostly because they've both been kind of irrelevant so far. But before I go in depth on these two, I first need to talk about how Danganronpa 2 handles its characters. Not only because it's important of course, but also I have contradicting thoughts about this topic. When I started making this video, I was a firm believer that Danganronpa 2 had better characters than Danganronpa 1. I still agree with this statement, however, there have been many and will be many instances where I say a character is irrelevant or introduce them by their ultimate skill in a single sentence and then they die and I never mention them again. So I want to clarify a little bit what I mean if I say Dang 2 has better characters. Yes, it has its fair share of less important characters, but it doesn't really have characters that exist for a single chapter or just to die. Every character feels like part of our class. For example, I can tell you more about Mekamaru, who has now been dead for over half the game, than Yasuhiro from Dang 1, and he survived all 6 chapters. I can actually tell you more about every character than Yasuhiro, but that's a separate issue. My point is, Dang 2 does have good characters that it manages well. Every character has a small yet consistent role throughout the entire story, and is at least somewhat likable. Except for this guy, he sucks. Going back to Mekamaru and Gundam, yeah, their actions have been relatively irrelevant up to this point. The only real action Mekamaru had so far was dying twice. Gundam, on the other hand, hasn't really had any big moments, but throughout the class trial, both of their good natures are revealed. They agreed to fight to the death, sacrificing themselves as victim and blackened so their friends would have a chance to escape. And looking at their characters, it makes perfect sense. Mekamaru, the ultimate team manager, looks out for his team, looks out for his friends. And Gundam, the ultimate breeder, looks out for all of his animals like their family. After their duel, Gundam sets everything up with the help of the 4 Dark Divas of Destruction, who are awesome by the way, and prepares for whatever may come. A good conclusion to a chapter that I felt started off rough. Not bad by any means, but not what it could have been. I think the motive most of all was the biggest hindrance. Starvation just takes so long to get going, and like I said, it's all or nothing. If it were me, as soon as I heard no food, I would have been like, "Fuck, we're dying." There is nothing you can do about that. My headcanon solution would be to have one person starve. Hear me out, this would put people on edge. The victim would be desperate to survive, everyone else would be desperate to help. Seeing someone suffer would mess with everyone so bad. I haven't talked about her yet, but imagine by random chance, choice, or Monokuma that Sonia, who everyone loves and multiple characters have romantic feelings for, is starved while everyone else watches. Shit would go down. I think something out of pocket like this would be great, and would even up the stakes of the entire chapter, although it seems a little dark. But in the end, we vote Gundam out and say our sad goodbyes as he takes the Stampede head on, ending Chapter 4. Now that we've finished my least favorite chapter, it is finally time to unveil not only my favorite chapter of Danganronpa 2, but quite possibly the best chapter in the entire series. Let's talk about Chapter 5. Yes, Chapter 5 is my pick for best Danganronpa chapter ever, and it's not like ironically good or good for Danganronpa, it's straight up great. Great to the point that I will actually put a spoiler warning for this chapter. As always, I'll keep my summary of it brief, but I will be talking about some of the biggest twisted mysteries of the game. And if you somehow made it this far in the video, but still want to play the game semi-blind, if you can still call it that, then a word of warning. Spoilers in... Rip. Yes, Nagito's bullshit has finally come to a brutal end, and the lead up to figuring out who killed him, how they killed him, and what secrets Nagito learned about the killing game and about all of us is amazing. Let's go to the beginning. Since Chapter 1, Nagito has been obsessed with creating the ultimate hope by any means necessary. This means beating the killing game, even if it means killing his friends or sacrificing himself as the Blackened. As long as a single ultimate student survives, they could be the ultimate hope. As the game goes on, he becomes even more obsessed as we learn about the Future Foundation, a spy among the students, and after Chapter 4, where Nagito clears the final dead room and learns the truth about everything. After he learns that truth, Nagito becomes hateful of everyone. No one knows why this hope-obsessed maniac suddenly shifted gears and resents his classmates, the hopes of the future, but Nagito decides to take over the killing game, planning to just kill everyone. How is he going to accomplish this? He's gonna blow it all up. So Hajime and the rest of our classmates have to run around the island searching for Nagito and the bombs, but when we run out of time, well, you know. This scene is definitely in the running for most brutal death in the series, and after looking closer, you realize it's also one of the most complex murder schemes of any mystery game ever. I can't stress enough how great going through Deadly Life and the class trial is on a first playthrough. Nagito's death in all practical terms is a suicide. He set everything up himself. He planned to be the victim the entire time. He set the damn building on fire. But still, Nagito is not the Blackened. Before he started the fire, he set aside multiple fire extinguishers, one of which he filled with poison. When Hajime and crew came to put the fire out, one student would unknowingly poison Nagito, setting in motion the entire Looney Tunes style mechanized death. But with no way to know which student initially poisoned him, there is no way to know who the killer is, meaning the class is destined to die. Nagito, however, accounted for this. He planned this entire scenario based on one thing, the thing he believed in most, his ultimate luck. Nagito believed that the person who would kill him by chance would be the person he was targeting the entire time, the traitor. Nagito believes the traitor is the only true hope left, and by having the traitor kill him, it would automatically make the trial unsolvable for the rest of the class, meaning the traitor, i.e. the Blackened, would be the last surviving student. Now our only hope of survival is to expose this traitor right now with almost no evidence at the very last minute. And in our final moments of desperation, we finally expose our best friend and best girl, Chiaki Nanami, the ultimate gamer. I've kept my mouth shut about Chiaki this whole time, even though she is one of the most important characters in the game. She takes an active role in every trial, oftentimes helping figure out the mystery, and plays an important role outside of the trials, probably being the strongest relationship that Hajime built throughout the game, regardless of how much free time you spend with her. As you play through the game, especially on a first playthrough, Chiaki really becomes Hajime's rock, similar to Kyoko from Danganronpa 1 if she were emotionally available. But Chiaki is overall awesome. It's not only sad to see our best friend end up being the traitor, it was also mind-blowing. Looking back, there were hints scattered throughout every chapter pointing to her being a traitor, but they were so subtle. As I got closer to learning the truth, everything really started fitting into place, and looking back on all those moments with Chiaki was wow. It was honestly a really fulfilling twist, and while her story's not over, I think it's time to wrap this chapter up. We all love Chiaki. Even if she is the traitor, she never betrayed us. She will gladly accept her fate in order to help her friends. Everyone votes. Game over Chiaki. You too, Monami. And that ends Chapter 5. So Chapter 5 was pretty awesome. Hajime's girlfriend died, Hajime's boyfriend died, and the question now is, how do you follow up the greatest chapter in the entire series? Well, you make the worst, most boring, most cringe, and embarrassing conclusion to any video game ever. Let's talk about Chapter 6. If it isn't obvious, yes, I hate Chapter 6. It has all the same problems of the first game, being an hours-long info dump with a pretty obvious conclusion, but the worst part about this chapter has got to be every single random bullshit twist. They are so ridiculous and so cringe, it's not even good in an ironic way. It's just awful. Let's talk about the worst offenders. Number 1, Junko is back. Yeah, she's still as cringe and poorly written as she was in the first game, and it just doesn't make sense that she would be here. There was some discussion in the comments of my last video about whether it's necessarily fair to judge Junko on information from outside the game we're currently talking about, and going by that logic, it's awful she appears here. She got straight squished in Danganronpa 1, but for some reason, there's a big-ass Junko AI standing in front of me. You can argue Junko has that god-level brain, and there are multiple possibilities of when she could have come up with this crazy scheme, but I'm not convinced. Obviously, these games were not originally written with a sequel in mind, so I'll have to cut it some slack, I guess, but her goal of brainwashing the students is so dumb. Let's talk about the next big twist, the Remnants of Despair. The entire game has led up to the reveal that Hajime and our classmates are not actually current students of Hope's Peak Academy. We are in fact former students turned Remnants of Despair, a group of individuals turned ultimate despairs who carry out Junko's will, spreading despair around the world. We've all been captured and placed into a virtual reality that will supposedly cleanse us of that despair. I honestly don't know what to say about this part. On one hand, a good sequel should and does expand the existing universe. On the other hand, the Remnants of Despair are cringe, and don't make enough sense for me to blindly accept their inclusion. Did we not learn in the last game that hope is stronger than despair? It was my understanding that being the ultimate despair was more or less unique to Junko and her unique talents and circumstances. She was born like this, and only wants to spread despair out of her own entertainment. I understand other people falling into despair, becoming hopeless, but becoming the ultimate despair and all the bullshit that comes with, I'm not convinced. It's also somewhat arguable that the ultimate students, who are oftentimes referred to as the hopes of the future, have some sort of resistance to despair. In Dang 1, I wouldn't say any of the participants even fell into despair. Sure, there were moments of weakness and some students were desperate enough to kill, but nowhere did I see or feel anyone turn straight up evil or hopeless. Not to mention, we actually defeated Junko in the end. You can also look to a character like Nagito from Dang 2. Nagito starts out as a lovable, hope-filled maniac who hates despair and hates Junko. What does he turn into after becoming a so-called remnant of despair? Nothing. He's the exact same. Him becoming the literal ultimate despair did not stop the deranged hope in his heart. I literally think he's the exact same character. So what does being the ultimate despair mean? If you look at the Remnants of Despair as a whole, characters like Mikan, who just turned into the ultimate pervert, Nagito, who turns into Nagito, and really any of our other classmates, becoming the ultimate despair didn't really do anything for their motivations. Maybe you can argue they're meaner than before, but is that it? Seriously? Fuyuhiko and Peko were straight up Yakuza. They already killed people IRL. I think being mean is the least problematic thing about them. No. Being an ultimate despair, being the main protagonist of a Danganronpa game means one thing. You're insane. Junko's insane, Nagito's insane, you're all insane. That's it, you're crazy, no explanation needed. Because any and all explanations wouldn't make sense because you're insane. And that's really the point, isn't it? You cannot grasp the true form of these characters' motivations. They are so complicatedly uncomplicated. They're so deep. They're so edgy. They are so garbage. Like, please, Danganronpa, you are so fun to play through. Can you just stick the landing for once? No. No, you cannot. And that brings me to my final issue with this game's conclusion. Maybe the worst twist in all of fiction. Izuru Kamakura, aka Hajime Hinata, the ultimate hope. I absolutely hate this guy. He sucks, and he's cringe, and he's stupid and boring. And wait a second, who am I talking about right now? Hajime or Izuru? I'm talking about both of them. Yes, I am a Hajime hater. He's your run-of-the-mill blank slate boring protagonist. similar to Makoto from the first game, but unlike with Makoto, who I immersed myself with and really felt one of the same while playing, I could never really get into the groove with Hajime. Oftentimes I just found myself making fun of him. He's so dumb and is so unaware and such an easy punching bag because of it. I remember reading about these crazy ass remnants of despair and how obsessed they are with Junko, and this out-of-pocket translation where it says, one of us actually had sex with Junko's unalived corpse. Classic Danganronpa, by the way. All I could say after reading that was, damn, Hajime probably did that. Like, for absolutely no reason, I'm just hating on this dude. And I will openly admit my bias, but there's just something about him or something he lacks where he's just kinda mid. And it's surprising since he fills the exact same role as Makoto, but where Makoto has a fun story arc of learning to believe in himself and his friends and transforms into the ultimate hope, Hajime feels like he just goes through the motions, and in the end transforms into garbage. Izuru Kamakura is a man-made superhuman created from Hajime's body that was artificially injected with every single ultimate talent known to man. However, in the process, Hajime's consciousness was removed and he was stripped of his humanity. Now he's a dark and brooding robot edgelord who is also a super genius, super everything human. He's basically Goku and Batman and L and Kirby and whoever else combined. Like, I'm not even kidding, this 17-year-old normal-ass kid in this normal-ass low-power level universe flash steps around bullets in the anime. I'm 50-50 on whether he can fly and shoot Ki Blast. And I'm the first person to say I'm not big on the super hype, epic, edgy power-up for no reason, but come on, this dude is literally the edgy teen weeboo power fantasy personified to the max. And I'm not alone with my distaste for Izuru. He is one of the more unpopular characters in the series. Aside from that, he's got another case of this dude's insane syndrome. Junko turned him into the ultimate despair, which to be fair makes more sense with him because he's basically Super Saiyan Junko, but that begs the question. How did someone who was supposed to be the better version of Junko, and every other student combined for that matter, lose to Junko? But again, it doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters is Izuru and Junko and the remnants of despair are cringe. So yeah, the whole chapter is us fighting with giant Junko until we uncover every truth, get a sick-ass cameo from the original GOATs, Hajime goes Super Saiyan, and thanks to Chiaki X Machina, Hajime and the rest of the group decide to kill Junko off for good, and have hope that they will wake up from their virtual reality and continue their lives, not as the remnants of despair, but as fellow hopes of the future. And that is the end of Danganronpa 2, and our final goodbye to despair. At least until the next game. Now that we've finished up the story of Danganronpa 2, I want to have an important discussion on some things that didn't really fit anywhere else in the video. Danganronpa 1 was a sort of flash in the pan. On release, there weren't any plans of making a sequel, but with how successful the game was, a sequel was inevitable. I think Dang 2 is a worthy successor. As much as I make fun of and fault the stories of these games, it's all par for the course of the series. And after accepting all the ridiculousness and the suspension of belief required to play it, I think Dang 2 does a good job expanding the universe. It has classy callbacks to the previous game, and overall does well building off of Dang 1, mechanic and otherwise. That being said, Dang 2 does fall into a lot of the same problems that Dang 1 had. It is hard to create a well-rounded cast of characters in a game like Danganronpa. Not every character will get the most screen time, not every character will have an important role. Most characters can't. It's the nature of a game like this where characters are dying off every chapter. That screen time, that character arc, is reserved for the killers, and the traitors, and the masterminds, not for random student number 13. For example, I never introduced Sonia Nevermind, the ultimate princess. Calling her random is harsh because she's popular, but she doesn't really have a single major contribution I could point to where it's like, this is her moment. I do like her a lot, but like I said, characters are tough. In fact, there's one more character I never introduced, and he kind of personifies a bigger issue of the game. Our final classmate, Kazuichi Soda, the ultimate mechanic, is a stalker. Calling him this might be a little much, but he is a weirdo. He's a milady-type incel who will not leave Sonia alone, and she hates it. Remember that big swimsuit scene from Chapter 2? That was his doing. I said it then and I'll say it again. This is a 2012 weeb game. Things like this are to be expected, but that doesn't mean I can't call it cringe. And that's just it. This game is cringe, it's convoluted, it's a mess, and I love it. Yes, there's a lot of problems that I don't overlook, but kind of tolerate, because it's not the main focus of the game. The main focus is mystery and fun, and playing through the first 5 chapters of each game always keeps me coming back. When Danganronpa is good, it's good. When Danganronpa 2 is good, it's great. There's a reason it's usually considered the best game in the series. Final score, 7 out of 10. Thanks for watching, see you next time.